You think you know someone, right? That's what I thought. Until one sunny Tuesday morning turned my world upside down. I remember the sunlight filtering through the blinds, casting a warm glow on what I thought was just another day. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, scrolling through my phone, waiting for her usual, good morning, text. It never came. Instead, what I got was a call that knocked the breath out of me. Liam, I need to tell you something. Her voice was shaky, not the usual cheerful tone I was used to. My heart sank. You know that feeling, right? When you know something's wrong, but you're not quite sure what it is yet. She confessed everything. How she'd been living a double life with some guy. How the sob stories and her pleas for financial help were all a facade. I just sat there, phone pressed to my ear, my mind struggling to process her words. It felt like a bad dream, one where you're screaming but no sound comes out. After the call, I was a mess. The apartment felt too quiet, too empty. I remember walking to the mirror, looking at my reflection. I didn't recognize the guy staring back at me. He looked hollow, defeated. My friends had tried to warn me. Dude, something's off with her, they'd said. But I brushed it off, blinded by what I thought was love. How could I have been so naive? I replayed every moment, every conversation in my head, searching for signs I might have missed. The financial hole I was in suddenly became real. The money I'd sent her, thinking I was helping my girlfriend, now left me scrambling to make rent. I'd sacrificed so much. For what? For a lie. But the worst part? It wasn't just the money or the betrayal. It was the fact that I'd given her my trust, my heart, and she'd shattered them into a million pieces. As I sat there, lost in my thoughts, I knew I had to make a choice. Do I let this break me, seek revenge, or just disappear into my own shell? Each option seemed like a different kind of poison, and I wasn't sure which one to pick. That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I realized that this wasn't just about her betrayal. It was a wake-up call, a painful, brutal wake-up call that life isn't always what it seems, and sometimes, people aren't who they pretend to be. The chapter closes with the protagonist in a state of introspection, his mind a whirlwind of emotions and decisions yet to be made. The journey ahead is uncertain, but one thing is clear, his life will never be the same again. Ever been hit by a truck? Me neither, but that's what it felt like, emotionally speaking, when she dropped the bomb on me. It was a Thursday evening, the kind where the setting sun throws shades of orange and pink across the sky. A beautiful scene for a heart-shattering revelation. I remember standing in the kitchen, my hand frozen on the fridge door, as she uttered those words. I've been living with someone else. At first, I laughed. It was a sick, disbelieving kind of laugh. This had to be some twisted joke. But the look in her eyes, it was all too real, too raw. My heart sank into an abyss I didn't know existed. What do you mean, living with someone else? I managed to choke out the words, each syllable laced with a growing sense of dread. She spilled it all. The lies, the deceit, the double life she'd been leading while I was planning our future together. Every confession was a hammer to my trust, nailing the painful truth into my mind. I wanted to scream, to ask why, but the words got trapped in my throat. Instead, I found myself fixated on mundane details. The way her hands trembled, the nervous shift of her eyes, the uneaten dinner growing cold on the table. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the clock ticking, marking the end of what I thought was a perfect relationship. It was over, not with a bang, but with a soul-crushing whisper. Walking away from her that night, I felt like a ghost in my own life. The streets were the same. The city lights still twinkled, but everything had lost its color. It was like watching the world through a grayscale filter. Back in my now too quiet apartment, I sat in the dark, replaying the evening over and over in my head. Anger surged through me, followed by an overwhelming sadness. I felt like a fool, a puppet in her hands. Then came the waves of memories, each one a dagger to my already bleeding heart. The weekend getaways, the late-night talks, the plans we made, all a facade. I remember picking up my phone, staring at our pictures, wondering how I missed the signs. But what hurt the most was the thought of her with someone else, sharing the moments she used to share with me. As I lay in bed, The reality of my situation started to sink in. I was alone, emotionally battered and betrayed. The path ahead was murky, filled with unanswered questions and unhealed wounds. But one thing was clear: the dream I was living was just that, a dream. Now, I had to wake up to a harsh new reality, one where the love of my life was nothing more than a beautifully crafted lie. Ever had one of those moments where your whole life feels like a puzzle with half the pieces missing? That was me, every waking second after the breakup. It was a typical rainy Wednesday, the kind where the sky is a blanket of gray, mirroring my mood perfectly. I was sitting in my usual spot at the corner cafe, nursing a coffee that had long gone cold. My eyes were glued to my laptop, but my mind was miles away, lost in the labyrinth of my shattered relationship. I had been avoiding my friends, dodging their calls and texts. I didn't need their "I told you so's" were sympathetic looks. But that day, Mike, my best buddy since college, walked in, uninvited but not unwelcome. "Hey, man," he greeted, his voice laced with concern. "We need to talk." I knew that tone. It was the intervention tone. Mike sat down across from me, his expression serious. "This isn't you, man. Brooding over your laptop, ignoring the world. You gotta snap out of it." He was right, but I wasn't ready to admit it. "I'm fine, Mike. Just need some time. That's all." We talked for hours, or rather, Mike talked, and I listened. He reminded me of the guy the first used to be before all this, carefree, ambitious, full of life. "You need to get back to being that guy," he urged. As the rain pattered against the cafe windows, I realized Mike was throwing me a lifeline. I had been drowning in my own sorrow, losing sight of who I was. It was time to start swimming back to the surface. The next few days were a blur of activity. I threw myself into work, took up jogging, anything to keep my mind off her. It helped, kind of. The pain was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but it was bearable. Then came Friday night. The guys insisted on a night out, claiming I needed it. I reluctantly agreed. We ended up at a crowded bar, the music loud enough to drown out my thoughts. I was starting to relax, maybe even enjoy myself, when I saw her. She was there, at the other end of the bar, laughing, her hair cascading down her shoulders just the way I remembered. My heart stopped, then raced. I felt a cocktail of emotions: anger, longing, heartache. Before I knew it, I was walking towards her, my legs moving on their own accord. She saw me, her smile faltering. We locked eyes, and for a moment, time stood still. "Hi," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Hi," she replied, a hint of nervousness in her tone. We talked, or rather, we stumbled through a conversation filled with awkward silences and unsaid words. It was clear we were both still hurting, still trying to make sense of what had happened. As I walked away from her that night, I felt a sense of closure. It wasn't complete, but it was a start. I realized that holding on to my anger, and if someone had told me that the worst was yet to come, I would have laughed in disbelief. But as I sat there, scrolling through the endless messages, the harsh truth hit me like a ton of bricks. The night was unusually quiet, the kind that amplifies every little sound in an empty apartment. I was sitting at my desk, surrounded by scattered papers and old photographs, remnants of a relationship I once thought was my forever. A ding from my laptop broke the silence. It was an email from an unknown sender, but the subject line caught my eye. The truth about her. Skeptical but curious, I clicked open the message. What I found was a rabbit hole of deceit. Screenshots, messages, photos, all pointing to the elaborate lies she had spun. Each click revealed another layer of betrayal, and with each revelation, my heart sank further. It wasn't just the cheating or the lies about her struggles. It was deeper, more calculated. Fake social media profiles, manipulated stories to gain sympathy and money, even lies about her family and past. I sat there, numb, trying to digest the magnitude of her deception. Anger bubbled inside me, a burning, relentless fury. How could I have been so blind? I had trusted her with my life, my dreams, and she had played me like a fool. My phone buzzed with a message from Mike. "Hey, we're worried about you. Let's grab a coffee tomorrow." I stared at the screen, the words blurring before my eyes. I didn't have the energy to pretend everything was okay, not even for Mike. Sleep evaded me that night. I lay in bed, the shadows dancing on the ceiling, echoing the turmoil in my mind. Thoughts of revenge consumed me. I wanted her to feel the pain she had inflicted on me, to understand the depth of my hurt. The following morning was bleak, the sun hidden behind a curtain of clouds. I skipped coffee with Mike, ignoring his calls and messages. I couldn't face him, couldn't face anyone. They wouldn't understand the storm raging inside me. Instead, I dove deeper into her web of lies, piecing together the extent of her manipulation. With each discovery, my resolve hardened. I wanted justice, some form of retribution for the emotional havoc she had wreaked. Days turned into weeks, and my world shrank to the four walls of my apartment. I barely ate, barely slept, driven by a singular obsession to expose her lies, to make her pay. My phone was a constant reminder of the life I had shut out. Messages piled up, unanswered calls, concerned voicemails from friends and family. But I couldn't tear myself away from my mission, couldn't let go of the anger that fueled me. As I sat there one evening, the apartment engulfed in darkness, I realized how far I had fallen. I was a shadow of my former self, consumed by bitterness and vengeance. The realization hit me hard, a sobering moment of clarity in a sea of chaos. You know how they say when you hit rock bottom, the only way is up. Well, I found an underground level to rock bottom. The clock on the wall ticked mockingly as I sat in my dimly lit living room, surrounded by stacks of unpaid bills and final notices. My financial ruin was no longer a worry, it was knocking at my door, loud and clear. My fridge was almost empty, a reflection of my state of mind. Eating had become an afterthought, something I did mechanically, without taste or pleasure. The mirror showed a stranger gaunt, with hollow eyes that had seen better days. I shuffled through the bills, the numbers swimming before my eyes. Rent overdue, electricity on the brink of being cut off. I was teetering on the edge of losing everything. In a desperate attempt to distract myself, I decided to take a walk, something I hadn't done in weeks. The city felt alien, with its bustling streets and people going about their lives, oblivious to my crumbling world. As I aimlessly wandered, I found myself in a familiar part of town, near a park where we used to walk together. Memories flooded back, laughter, shared secrets, promises of forever. It felt like a different lifetime. I was about to turn back when I saw a street performer. Curiosity got the better of me, and I edged closer. The performer, a young guy with a guitar, was singing with such passion, such raw emotion, that it struck a chord in me. His song was about loss, pain, and finding the strength to move on. Each word resonated, echoing my own heartache. I stood there, transfixed, as the music filled the void in my soul, if only for a moment. After his performance, I felt a strange sense of calm. The music had touched something inside me, a part that I thought was lost forever. I dropped a few dollars into his guitar case, offering a small smile of gratitude. On my way back home, I felt a flicker of something unfamiliar, a glint of hope, perhaps. It was a subtle shift, but it was there, lingering at the back of my mind. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake off the feeling. Maybe it was time to stop dwelling in the past, to stop letting my desire for revenge consume me. Maybe it was time to start picking up the pieces, however daunting that seemed. Ever had that moment where you realize you're tired of being tired? That's where I found myself, at the edge of a cliff, ready to take a leap into the unknown. The morning sun streamed through the cracks in my blinds, casting a warm glow on what had become my cave of solitude. I sat up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes, a sense of determination brewing within me. I knew I couldn't go on like this, haunted by her betrayal, living in a loop of anger and despair. It was time for a change, time to claw my way out of this pit. But where do you start when your whole world has been turned upside down? The answer came to me over a cup of lukewarm coffee, staring at the chipped mug in my hands. I needed help, professional help. It was a tough pill to swallow, admitting I couldn't handle this on my own, but it was a necessary step. So, I picked up my phone, my fingers hesitating over the numbers. After a deep breath, I dialed the number of a therapist I had found online. My voice was shaky as I made the appointment, but with each word, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. The days leading up to the appointment were a mix of anxiety and hope. I spent them trying to bring some order to my chaotic life. I started small, cleaning up the apartment, paying off some bills, grocery shopping. Each task was mundane, yet it felt like a victory. The day of the appointment arrived. I walked into the therapist's office, a bundle of nerves. But the therapist, Dr. Ellis, had a way of making me feel at ease. She listened, really listened, as I poured out my heart. It was the first time I had spoken about everything without holding back, and it was liberating. Walking out of that office, I felt lighter, like I had taken the first step on a long journey to healing. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but for the first time in months, I had a sense of direction. Buoyed by this new sense of purpose, I reached out to my friends, the ones I had pushed away in my grief. To my surprise, they welcomed me back with open arms, no questions asked. We met up for a drink, and as we talked and laughed, I felt a part of something again, a part of life. These small steps marked the beginning of my recovery. I found joy in the little things, a sunny day, a good book, a hearty meal. I started jogging in the park, the fresh air clearing my mind. I even took up cooking, something I had always wanted to try but never got around to. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were moments when the anger and hurt came crashing back, triggered by a song, a place, a memory. I would feel the old urge for revenge, the bitterness threatening to engulf me. In those moments, I leaned on what Dr. Ellis had taught me, to acknowledge my feelings, to understand them, but not to let them control me. It was a battle that when I was slowly learning to win. You ever wake up one day and realize you're not the same person you were yesterday? That happened to me, somewhere along the twisted road of getting over her. The morning air was crisp, the kind that fills your lungs with a refreshing chill. I sat on the edge of my bed, a sense of clarity washing over me. For the first time in months, I felt in control, like I was steering my life rather than being tossed around by its turbulent waves. I had spent the last few weeks wrestling with my demons, the shadows of anger and revenge. But as I sat there, watching the sun spill its golden light through my window, I realized something profound. Revenge was a dead end, a path that would only lead me further into darkness. I grabbed my phone, scrolling through the contacts. Stopping at her name, a flood of emotions surged through me. But this time, it was different. There was no anger, no burning desire for retribution, just a quiet acceptance of what had happened and a determination to move on. I headed out for my morning jog, the rhythm of my feet on the pavement a therapeutic beat. The park was alive with the sounds of life, birds chirping, kids laughing, dogs barking. Life was moving on, and so was I. Post-jog, I found myself at a small coffee shop, a cozy place that had become my new haunt. Sipping on my latte, I realized how much I had changed. The bitterness that once clouded my every thought had dissipated, leaving room for something new, hope. It was at that coffee shop where I met Jenna. She was a breath of fresh air, a ray of sunshine piercing through the remnants of my gloomy past. We struck up a conversation, light and easy, about everything and nothing. For the first time in a long while, I felt a genuine connection with someone. We started seeing each other, casual dates at first, walks in the park, movie nights, dinners. With Jenna, I laughed, I shared, I lived. She was like a soothing balm on my scarred heart. But it wasn't just about finding someone new. It was about rediscovering myself, learning to be happy again, on my own terms. I picked up old hobbies, reconnected with friends, and even started volunteering at a local shelter. Life was no longer a series of dark days. It was a mosaic of experiences, bright and varied. One evening, as I walked home, I saw her, my ex. Our eyes met, and for a heartbeat, time stood still. But there was no drama, no confrontation, just a nod of acknowledgement, a silent goodbye to a chapter that had closed. As I walked away, a sense of closure enveloped me. I had come full circle, from the depths of